Welcome back to Checkpoint. Thanks for staying with us. The hashtag, as always, online is Checkpoint, at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. Please do get in touch with us. So, a lot happened on Madaraka Day. Some Kenyans were not too pleased. Others felt bullied as a result, members from a particular community. And so we're discussing that tonight. And we've got Daisy Amdani, we've got Patrick Gadara and Martin Olo. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Daisy, I'll start with you because you had a sort of outside looking in perspective. You were not in the country at the time. And so I'm sure you had the benefit of looking at the furor online over what happened on Madaraka Day, the manner in which it was conducted, the use of vernacular language. I mean, there was a section of Kenyans that were outraged. What was your perspective?
It was very disappointing because, in fact, you know, when looking at social media, I was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? What has happened? So I actually, you know, went online and, watched the whole unfolding. And I think that it's very unfortunate that it came to that because tribalism is a serious problem in this country. And, you know, happening at a time when we are going for elections. And Kenyans are very good at hoarding their feelings and having a breakout, you know, during the electoral cycle. But having said that, the fact that the president was not able to distinguish himself as a Jubilee leader and as the president of the Republic on a national day, that also says a lot. And I think that when we look at the narrative that has been spun around the freedom struggle in Kenya, what happened on Madaraka Day is also indicative of the narrative that we have been spinning that gives a certain section of Kenyans a sense of entitlement to leadership in this country. Because when we talk about the freedom struggle, we do not talk about the contribution that other tribes made to it. We talk about predominantly the Mau Mau struggle. And you know the Mau Mau struggle is predominantly the Kikuyu. And happening at a time, you know, in Nyeri, which was in the Mount Kenya forest, which was the heartland of the Mau Mau struggle, it is bringing back that sense of, you know, we fought for this. This is our presidency. And then going to the extent of refusing to recognize the presence of the official leader of the opposition and a man who himself has fought for freedom in this country, the second liberation, but whose father has also contributed immensely to the freedom struggle in this country. I think that, for me, was really an act of gross, you know, omission on the part of the president and completely out of order and served to open up the fissures. If you look at the outbursts that came out, you can tell that cohesion is a problem in this country. It's a manifestation of, of course, a lack of total lack of wisdom, but also what has National Cohesion and Integration Commission been doing to the extent that, you know, when a government and the president and an entire government can set up, you know, this public national holiday around an ethnic narrative. That for me is a problem. So that there was a discord between what the president, his speech and his actions, and the actions of the MC and the people around there.
Okay.
I think,
all right.
you know.
But yet the idea of taking our national holidays around the country, you know, is a good one. It's well placed, is it not, Martin? Especially, you know, in the era of devolution as well.
Maybe we should rethink it. Because we should rethink it. I mean, the Constitution says that the seat of government is in Nairobi. So it only follows that national days should actually be held around Nairobi. Because then Nairobi...
Wasn't it an attempt to bring in all
I hear you, but you can see that potential problems with it.
Okay.
That when we are in Nyeri or we're in Machakos or we're in Luyaland or Luoland, people may think that it's time for them to express their chauvinistic positions. And I think that message or that innocence around even trying to use a local language is not good for a national day like that one. Of course, you know, in devolution forums or in county forums, that is excusable because really we are looking at a common language down there. But on a national day, it appears to be a little bit overstretched.
A common language down there, that's assuming that predominantly, most regions, well, I suppose it is, but
if you were to do a county forum, you can excuse
really?
but this is a national.
Isn't that balkanizing the country once again?
Let's agree. Our language is not our problem. The fact that we speak different languages does not make us less of a people. Our unity, our harmony is a result of different things, not really, yeah. I mean, let's celebrate our tribes. Let's celebrate our backgrounds. Everybody is proud of who they are, their culture and so on, and that's a good thing. And that's why I'm saying that if it is a county issues, perhaps even with that, you can't find anything wrong with a local language being used. But when it's a national issue, the Constitution says that we have two languages, the Swahili and English, both official languages. So that is the language of the national
Gadara, Martin
discourse.
says language is not our problem. So what is our problem? Do we have a problem?
Well, I think we do have a problem. And it's a problem that's predominantly one of identity. And I think it is where and the forums at which you express this identity, where does it matter? I think when it comes to your national holidays, predominantly what we should be stressing are our national identities. It doesn't mean that our tribal ones or ethnic ones are any less, but within that forum, within that arena, what really we should be hyping
what is our national identity?
Well, there is a national identity, and it is an artificial identity, just as all others, even our tribal identities, are really artificially created, all of them, but there are arenas at which we express them. There are places. So when I'm at home, and I'm seated in the privacy of my house and stuff, I would probably speak in Kikuyu, to all my other fellow Kikuyus, people who identify as Kikuyus. But the moment I go into a national forum, I want to be inclusive, to include everybody else. So I'm not going to be speaking in Kikuyu because I don't want to alienate certain people. Now that's not to say there's something intrinsically wrong with speaking in Kikuyu or speaking in Luo or speaking in whatever language you choose. It's just where you choose to highlight them. When we have, for example, athletes running for Kenya, we never identify them as, here is Kalenjin so-and-so, here is Luo
and that's
so-and-so.
a place where we, in fact, encourage the athletes to speak in their mother tongue. And, the Germans and the British can find a translator. So it's a little easier for us to do that
but to
on an
us,
international
when we're looking at them and when we speak about them, and even how we dress them when they're going out, is as Kenyans, predominantly. And that's the identity we want to stress. So yes, a Kenyan can speak Kikuyu and still be a Kenyan. That's okay. But on a national holiday, given all the issues that are around it, and the fact that we are trying to be as inclusive as possible, I think it would just be prudent to ensure that you use the two languages that you yourselves have identified are markers of your nationality, which is English and Swahili, and use those because then they include more people rather than sort of just retreat to a sort of a tribal background that will exclude more people. And one other thing, I think even on county forums, you've got to be very careful because counties aren't homogeneous, and as much as we'd like to think them to be, they might be predominantly people from particular communities, but we've had half a century of people moving around. There are guys within there who may not necessarily speak this language, and you don't want to exclude them. So if you're going to govern for the benefit of everybody, then employ the tools that you have that include. So what you're saying is the national languages
also apply at the county level?
I think that's what that would be prudent.
I wanted to add, Gadara has, he in passing mentioned what the problem is. The problem is not so much our identity. It's about inclusion. It's about inclusion and the feeling of exclusion, okay? And that's one of the things that we identified in 2007. If you remember, among the Agenda 4 items was that issue of how do we address the exclusion of groups, okay? And that's why people pushed for devolution, so that we have a system that allows people to feel that they're included and they're part and parcel of governing. So when you begin to make people, to exclude people, and you can exclude people by language,
because that's what I was going to ask.
Yes, so when you speak a language that is identified only by a certain few on a national holiday to celebrate the freedom of our nation, Kenya, of 42 tribes. You cannot use a language, first of all, and I mean this in the best way possible, but a language that has been identified by most as a people who have tended to exclude others.
Okay.
And that is really what came out. People began to feel like, I mean, like, seriously? You know?
And we'll get to that, because when we talk about the feeling of inclusion and the feeling of exclusion, I mean, and we can talk about the various ways in which certain people feel excluded in this country. And it's not just on language. I mean, you'll talk about the people who live in the border towns. You'll talk about the Somali community, the Asian community. There's a number of people who feel excluded for a number of reasons. But then we talk about inclusion. And Patrick, then what did we do? We, have the National Cohesion Integration Commission, and suddenly we're talking about, so what does inclusion mean? Because we take a look at the jobs in the civil sector, and we say, we need to have X amount and these number and these number. So what does inclusion mean? I'm not sure that if we had more members from my community in the civil service,
that you would
or somebody from my community as president, that I would necessarily feel included, or would I?
No, well, I think that sometimes we mistake the manifestations of a problem for the problem. So we think that, for example, let's have ethnic balance. We even write it into our constitution, as if we employed so many Luos, so many Kalenjin, so many this, we have fixed the problem. No, the idea should be that we create equal pathways so that people from whatever community you come from, it shouldn't matter when it comes to appointment for this. Now, we know as a fact, for real, that over the last 50 years, governments have tended to favor particular communities when it comes to whether it's appointments, whatever, and in a sense exclude, actually not even in a sense, quite blatantly exclude others. People lose their jobs because they're in particular, they're not from particular tribes or whatever, or that's what we should be solving. Not trying to dictate that, this is what the outcome should look like. It's fix the problem itself. And that problem of exclusion comes from from independence, and the fact that when we got independence, our politicians chose to hype our differences amongst tribes in order to avoid a discussion about redistribution.
Okay. So this is about distribution.
It's about a distribution of resource, as in our resources and our wealth is concentrated in the hands of a very small elite from all communities.
There you go. Okay, that's a good place. But what they try
to say is, don't look at us as this small elite. We are representatives of
Okay, all right.
Stuff,
I'd like you to hold that thought for just a moment. We'll come to you, Martin, in just a moment, because on the line, we understand, is Raphael Tuju, the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, and he'd like to weigh in on this conversation and, of course, what informed the choices that were made on Madaraka Day at the celebrations in Nyeri town. Mr. Tuju, thanks for joining the show on phone. I'm sure you've been listening in and you've followed the conversation after Madaraka Day. Perhaps you'd like to tell us what informed the decisions about the MCs that were picked, the choice of language, and the accusation that there was no distinguishing between party politics and a national holiday.
Well, thank you, Yvonne. I hope you can hear me well.
We can, thanks.
Thank you. I think let us accept that there was a previous Madaraka Day celebrations in Machakos. And from my recollection, there was a lot of Kikamba, especially among the performers. Those who are performing in the field were essentially mainly Kamba dancers, and they sang in Kikamba. There was no problem with that. The problem we have is when now we go to Nyeri, then we have to profile it as Kikuyu being sung on a national day, and that seems to be rubbing some people the wrong way, and therein lies the danger. Let me just mention the issue of recognition of Raila Odinga during this function. I want to challenge all of us, not just those who are on the panel, but all of us Kenyans. If we have any recollection of a time when President Kibaki's first time as NAC president, Kalonzo Musyoka was a senior minister, so was Raila Odinga, and myself, I was also in that government. I have no recollection of Uhuru Kenyatta as official leader of opposition being invited, being recognized, and being invited to go and speak on Madaraka Day, not even on Kenyatta Day, which was named after his father. He would be there with the rest of us who were in cabinet and other guests. The former First Lady, Mama Ngina Kenyatta, would be there. No mention, no recognition. What is so special that if Raila Odinga is in that function and is not mentioned or is not recognized, then it is a big deal. I'll mention another one. Part of the problem we have in this country, and I thank you very much for the program that you had on checking the facts. Part of the problem we have in this country is sometimes even the lies that we speak. Look at the kind of behavior we're getting from Mombasa with Joho, being extended all the state courtesies when the president would go there. And
all right,
then he is being confrontational with the president
Mr. Tuju,
right on stage. So that is the same thing. No, let me finish. You are there. Let me finish. That is the same thing. You know, you cannot predict what Raila is going to say. You cannot predict. When he can predict,
Mr. Tuju, allow me to interject. With due respect, allow me to interject because I feel like we're veering off a little bit. If we can speak about the use of language. There was also the nature of the songs that were being sang. Many said there were praise songs to the president and the deputy, rather than perhaps, praise songs to the nation as we're celebrating Madaraka. And many saying that, there was a very thin line between a political rally and a national event. I mean, even the issue of Raila Odinga and Joho aside, but just to that specifically, and maybe you could answer, Martin Oloy is here saying, perhaps we need to rethink going to the counties. What are your thoughts?
Going to the counties in what respect?
Taking the national holidays to various parts of the country.
Yes, that was an idea which the president came up with, and there was a celebration in Nakuru. There was a celebration in Machakos. And in those two occasions, I think, the Machakos one, I think, was attended by, if I recall, our friend, former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka was there. In Nakuru, they were invited. They didn't turn up. In Nyeri, they got the invitations. At least the former Prime Minister did turn up. There's nothing wrong with taking them to the counties. Actually, I think it's an excellent idea. We should be taking them to the counties. And Nyeri happened to be one of the counties which had that function this last Madaraka Day.
Okay, all right. I'll allow my guests here to perhaps weigh in and ask you some questions. Martin, I'll start with you. You can direct any questions or comments to
I think that what the Secretary General of Jubilee has done is to explain the circumstances and maybe to put it in a context. I think what is clear for us is to try and look at what is the message that we want to send to the country. We are people who are a bit sensitive. Our unity is a challenge. And that my view is that the less we play up our tribes, the less we play out our differences, the better. Yes, it's a national day. What do you do with it? Do you want to... Okay, this was a national day, but also inside the campaign period, because the campaign period had started by the 28th of May.
Yeah.
So that is a bit of a challenge there. And basically, there's more scrutiny on Nyeri than even Machakos or Nakuru. So those passed, but right now we are into a political campaign period. Yeah. Basically, the issues to do is five. What do we pick out of it? Do we want to, again, some of those things came up in Nandi today, where people are less tolerant. I think we just need to build up on our tolerance so that we allow people...
Play down. On our tribalism. Yes. Daisy, do you have
allow
anything?
People to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
I do want to say this. While I don't think that there's a problem with taking it to the counties, but I think it's important to understand that when we have national public holidays, whether we take them to the counties or not, we must understand that as a nation, we have two official languages. One is English and one is Kiswahili. And it is imperative that those are the languages that are used. Now, to greet people in their vernacular, that is not a problem, because people do that. Even when you have rallies in different parts of the countries, you greet them. But I think that it also takes discernment to also understand the underlying undertones that are the rumblings of the nation right now. I think that it was ill-advised. In fact, the way it played out, because of the season that we are in, the political temperatures, what it can do to political temperatures. And I think that as a government and as a party, those are things that they should have been keen on, being able to discern that. Now, on the issue of whether or not you recognize or even give an opportunity to the official leader of the opposition to speak. Please remember, it was a national holiday celebrating freedom heroes of this country. It would have costed the president absolutely nothing to even just recognize his presence there. They invited him, and to say that we are pleased that the official leader of opposition is here, because one of the things that the president has been very keen to speak on is building unity. That in itself would have shown his magnanimity. Now, to start citing for us that in previous holidays it has never happened, well, those holidays happened before we had the ethnic blow-up that we had in 2007.
Okay,
so I think that it's important that as a government, that they be able to discern the times that we are in and the undertones in the nation, and to act accordingly.
All right.
That is wisdom.
Let's hear from Tuju on that. We'll come to you in just a moment. I'd like him to respond. Mr. Tuju, if you're still on the line, you've had to hear what Daisy and Martin have said. Your response to that?
Well, I think we all have a responsibility to try and bring our country together, and I would be very, very keen to try and, appeal to all of us, whether we're in the media, whether we're in politics, that ours is a very fragile country in terms of managing our ethnic differences. And we all have to be very, very careful about it. I get worried when I see profiling of any community, because that profiling is wrong. Just to answer what Mr. Olo has just said, we must be tolerant. Like the kind of thing which happened in Kapsabet today is unacceptable during this day and age. By the same token, I was supposed to go to Bondo today. I didn't go because I was told by my people on the ground that I should not go. There was heckling, which was arranged in Bondo. There was supposed to be a church function, and after that, there was a consecration of a bishop which was going on. We were all supposed to go there. And, we got reports that there were a lot of heckling was arranged for us, so I didn't go myself. So that tolerance, it takes two to tango. Just as government should reach out and make sure that, all of us respect the fact that we all belong to this country, members of the opposition should also be temperate in their language. They should not be making incendiary remarks that inflame our situation.
Okay, what do you say to, the question that perhaps even as you take the national holidays to other parts of the country, that perhaps Kiswahili and English should be the only languages used during that? And perhaps to respond to Daisy's specific concern that it was ill-advised and not cognizant of the times that we're in.
If I remember very well, only the two languages, Swahili and English, were used in the speeches. The president read his speech, first of all, in English, and then he made remarks in Kiswahili. That was the same with Ruto. But of course, there was the usual Moriega Renge, which even I, normally, if I'm in Central, I greet people in Central in their language. If I'm in Nyanza, I greet people in Nyanza in Kijaluo. If I'm in Kisii, I do the same. If I'm in Western, I do. That's normal political speak. But all the official speeches, those who spoke in English. and Swahili. The only thing which you can say is that there was an entertainment which was in Kikuyu. There were only 2 entertainments. The program was cut very short. So there was one presentation by the locals. Unfortunately, they speak Kikuyu. Maybe some people have a problem with that. The next presentation, which was also music, was in English, actually.
Let's hear from Patrick Gadara. Please stay on the line. Thank you very much.
Well, I have a few issues with what Mr. Tuju said. First, when he spoke about Joho at the coast, I seem to remember Joho being locked in his office, by police, being essentially
I think he's speaking about previous
during a presidential function, he was essentially prevented from going there. So it's not the case that the president is always welcoming of these people. I also remember that I think it was during Heroes Day last year, when he was giving his list of heroes and quite prominently left out Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. We remember this. This is a pattern, that's created. I think it's incumbent upon the president. The Constitution puts on him a responsibility, a specific responsibility, as a symbol of national unity, to unite the country, And he cannot say that, well, because the opposition is not doing it, I will not. The responsibility is put on him specifically. And I think it's up to him to insist on wherever he is, whatever functions he attends, he does anything he can to ensure that people are included, that people feel that they are part of this. The entire nation can participate. He symbolizes that entire unity. So I think...
Yes, Mr. Tuju?
Yvonne, if you'll allow me to comment on what Mr. Gadara is saying. First of all, he's a person I respect a lot, and I must say that I have a lot of respect for this panel. I mean, we are all thinkers, and we are, in our own respect, leaders of this country, because, we have the voice to be able to vocalize what we are saying now on the media. The president has done that several times. I still recall maybe if it was last year, when the president actually shared a stage at the Holy Family Basilica. All the speeches were gone, and then it was a turn for the president to speak, and he actually invited Raila on stage. And they had pleasantries, and Raila said how his family and the president's family come a long way. They call each other very often. They respect they respect each other. When Raila's son died, I think it became a state funeral. I mean, all the military aircrafts were deployed to help as far as that funeral was concerned. So the only problem I have is there's a certain cultic following of Raila that if he's not given a certain recognition according to the way certain people want it, then they have a problem with it. They feel that just as they feel emotionally about it, that he should be recognized, he must speak and the rest of it, then, they feel it's not enough. My friend, there were many people who suffered in this country in the fight for independence. We have the Chengonekos of this world. Mm-hmm. We have the wife of Kimathi, who I think was in Nyeri, who was not even mentioned. Mm. So, this infatuation with Railaism, sometimes it borders on cult, and I think we all have to be very careful about it.
Okay.
It's not really infatuation, to be quite honest. I didn't mention Raila Odinga in my comments. But the second thing that I had a problem with that Mr. Tuju mentioned was when he says you don't know what they're going to say at these functions.
Right.
And
he says
I'm wondering, whether the perception is that it's only a certain group that can be trusted to say things that are unifying for the country. I think, as is mentioned, there has been situations where the president has invited Raila and allowed him to speak. I think Raila has been quite responsible in what he has said in many of those occasions. So I don't think that can be an excuse that can be put up to say that, well, we don't know what he's going to say, so therefore we're not going to allow him speak. That said, I don't think that there's anything that necessitates that official opposition leader has to speak or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just being cognizant of the times that you're in. And as I said from the beginning, it's about prudence. It's about you thinking through what is it, how would this action that I'm taking be perceived?
I'd like us to move this conversation away from Raila Odinga for just a moment.
Yes.
Because it wasn't just about the personality of him and being recognized. But then, Martin, there was a sense in which, and let's put this plainly, that Kikuyus felt profiled online. And they felt like everybody was ganging up against them. And we have seen this before in certain previous election campaign periods where it was 41 against 1, 42 against 1, that sort of thing. But so how do we start to have these conversations, where even as we talk about a certain group, Daisy was saying, perhaps feeling entitled to the fight for freedom in this country, that we don't again do the same thing that we are accusing others of doing, which is profiling and excluding a particular community.
You see, Yvonne, there are about 3 things that are happening in this country that we must recognize. It's not true that we are only organizing around politics around tribes. When you look at what I call the Sonko phenomenon, the people who support Sonko do not think about him as a Mkamba. They think about Sonko and work with him. And there are also enough people today who are looking at other ways of organizing. So it's unfortunate or unfair to punish or to profile a community just because of an event that has happened in Nyeri. Certainly, there must be a number of people who, even from Central, who are not happy with a few things there. So the profiling or the backlash is not fair. And again, as we've said, this country belongs to all of us. And the more reasonable we are and the more tolerant we are, the better we are likely to be. I mean, we've been there. In 2007, we've been there. We profiled one group against, so many against one, and it has led us to that point, because then people also react in their defense and so on. So what we really need to do is to say, look, whatever happened in Nyeri was unfortunate, and I actually think we need to grow out of it. I mean, there are many good things that happened in Nyeri. There are good speeches. I mean, the president's speech had many good things to say, and indeed, there are many things that we could talk about. So what we are stuck with, which is unfortunate, and I think we all agree that maybe this being a campaign period, something that we need to think about, because it's a sensitive thing. He was already a presidential candidate, so really there was too much focus on him. But that said, I think what we need to do is to grow out of it and to learn from it, and to actually ensure that going forward, we encourage our supporters, especially from the political divides, to accept, to be addressed. They have choices to make and they have decisions to make. They don't have to take what everybody tells them, but they should allow people to talk and allow campaigns to happen.
All right. Patrick, how do we grow out of it? What is this? Because this is not the first time we're going to hear this. Another incident will come up and it'll, open this big sore.
Right.
Which is there. How do we start to solve this issue? Is it, this national cake or whatever it is that we keep talking about, national cake, national ugali?
As he talks about, earlier on when you're saying, you can have a government. By the way, there are 42 tribes. Even if you try to bring every tribe,
now
43
with the
now with
Makonde. Yes.
Even if you try to bring all these people,
with the Asians. Okay.
We have limited the number of.
Oh my goodness.
We've limited the number of cabinet positions, so there's no way you can have everybody in that.
Yes.
So the thing for me is not whether you have people employed from this; it's whether the programs you have, and politics being what it is, what you have to distribute, what you have to share around, what you have to give to the rest of the country can reach them fairly. I mean, every child, wherever they are, should have access to a school.
Right.
Every child, wherever they are, should have access to health services. It matters not who is in government. What matters is the services actually come.
Right, but that's the thing. I think the question that we really should be asking ourselves is whether Kenya works for everybody. If we really want people to invest in this idea of something called Kenya, it's got to deliver for them. And it's got to be able to say that if I'm a Kenyan, there are certain resources that this Kenyanness will give to me, whether they are psychological resources, I enjoy people winning, races and stuff, and I can feel part of a winning thing. But also on a very tangible level, when I go to hospital, when I go to school, what does Kenyanness deliver? I think that if we visit the mistakes that people in government might make upon entire communities, then we are being just as bad as they are. The government might have messed up at the Nyeri function. Doesn't mean the Kikuyu messed up, and we shouldn't be thinking of it that way. So let's say things could have been better. Let's learn from what happened in Nyeri. Let's pick out what worked. Yeah. And if I was Mr. Tuju, I'd be looking at it and internalize. Yes, there's criticism coming. What is it telling me? Yeah. People are uncomfortable with something. What is that, and what can I then do to ensure the next time I have a function, whether it's in Nairobi or in Kisumu or whatever, I can have it such a way that I have learned my lessons and it's a better, more unifying event than the previous ones. I think if we start looking at it that way, then we can take it step by step and keep improving, the things that we do, so that Kenya starts delivering to all Kenyans, not just to a section of them.
Okay, all right. So take in the feedback and start to say, what is it saying? How do we get a national identity? We've tried in so many ways, and perhaps some people would say it's superficial. We've tried with a national dress. We couldn't even agree on that. And when we did, I'm not sure that I own one. Do you? Or do any of you? Okay, that's great. No one requires you to wear it. But then that is also part of the problem in terms of requiring people to do things. We've put things in the law, in terms of, even in our constitution, cohesion and integration. So we've tried all of these things, but still, we're not there yet. Maybe some would say it's the basic framework, but what more should we be doing now?
We must be deliberate about it. Because you see, the thing is, the state as it was crafted previously delivered only for a certain few. And so the sense of entitlement was, if my tribesperson is there, then there is a trickle-down effect to my people. Yeah. As Gadara had mentioned, that while there are specific elites from across the tribal divide that hold and consolidate power to themselves, they give that impression that they consolidate and they hold power on behalf of the tribe.
The tribe. So when in fact it is an elite,
when it is actually an
that
elite
has a number of tribes.
They speak to each other.
Yeah.
So we need to be deliberate, and we need a Kenya that delivers for everybody. You can't go around campaigning as a leader saying, if you're not in government, then you are out.
Then you're out.
Okay.
What does that mean?
All right.
No, you have as a leader, you have a responsibility to deliver for every Kenyan, including those who did not vote for you.
Yeah.
Because
and who are not in government, because we're all in government,
that's the
right?
campaign that is done.
But one thing I'll very quickly say
I'd like us to close.
We need to shy away, to move away from sort of the superficial articulations of nationality, whether it's national dress, standing at for the anthem, and stuff like that.
Placing your hand on your heart,
These are just empty symbols, to be quite honest.
Okay.
What we really need to look at is the substance of nationality, not just the form of it. And that substance, what does it actually deliver to people? And the moment Kenya becomes successful in delivering to people the benefits of being Kenyan, then you will see Kenyanness becoming, I think.
All right. I'd like to get the closing comments from Mr. Tuju, Secretary General for Jubilee Party. Thanks for staying with us on the line. Give us your final comments, if you can, in just a minute, sir, please.
Well, I've stayed on the line for so long. I hope you can send me some credit. But all I can say is that, all over Africa, every time a country has failed in the African continent, whether we talk about Somalia, we talked about Rwanda at one time, or South Sudan, all the countries which fail in Africa, it is invariably because of ethnic strife or clan strife. So I think we all have to be very careful how we play this ethnic politics. And really my appeal to all Kenyans is that it is our responsibility, all of us, whether we come from majority tribes or minority tribes, to just step back a little and ensure that we don't fan more ethnic animosity against any tribe, That's all I can say.
All right. And on that note, we wind up our discussion. Thank you, Martin Olo, Patrick Gadara, Daisy Amdanyi, and also joining us on phone was the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Mr. Raphael Tuju. I thank you all for your views on this one. It's definitely a discussion that doesn't end here. What are your thoughts on our national identity? Do we have a crisis? Or do we not? And how do we start to solve this? What are some of the fundamentals we need to have in place? Do we have them already? So, some interesting fundamental questions, which I will also be raising in my take at the end of this bulletin. So you want to stay tuned to hear more on this. Thanks for watching. Keep the comments coming. The hashtag is Checkpoint. We will be right back in just a moment. Thank you.